Hello, ladies, and welcome to Tell Your Story 2020 Virtual Book Fair. I am your host, Consuela Meehan. Today, I have with me authors Susan Chapman, Nicole Jackson, and Shelia Sewell. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Morning. Today, we're going to talk about your books and just get a feel of you as an author, what you may want to let everyone know about your books, about you personally. I know when we start our writing journey, we all have to fill out an author bio. So I don't know if you guys plan on, writing several books, whether this be your first or last, but that will change over time because we change over time.
Right.
So, give us an idea of what led you to write, and tell us about yourself. Susan, we can start with you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hi, how are you today?
I am good. So, before we get started, Susan, tell us things about yourself.
Okay, I'm from Pennsylvania originally. I grew up there. I grew up on a farm. My dad was not a farmer. He was an electrician, and but he wanted us to live in the country. So we grew all our own vegetables. We canned everything for the winter time. We had some animals. We had chickens. We had over 100 chickens. And so we had to collect eggs in the morning, every morning. And we had some little piglets, and they would always get out of the pen and run wild in the field. And my mother would wake us up, get up, the pigs are loose, go get them. And we'd have to go and chase them down before the bus came. So that was, I'm one of 8 children.
Okay.
I'm the oldest of 8 children. So I helped take care of all the younger ones. Also, that was part of my responsibilities growing up. And we all had chores every day. My dad was in the army, so he was very strict about everything. And, we had to use manners. We went to church every Sunday. Normal growing up, you know. And then later, when I graduated from high school, I worked in a bank for a couple of years. And then I decided that I wanted to go to college, but my parents couldn't afford to pay for it. So I quit my job in the bank, and then I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school. So I have three different degrees from college. And after I graduated from college, I met my husband. Um, I worked with him. I met him at work, and we got married. And we had 2 children. And then I was a stay-at-home mother, and I raised my children. And he worked. So then I moved to Florida. My husband and we got a divorce when my children were a little bit older, and I moved to Florida, and then that's when I started to write books.
Okay.
Yeah, I started later in life, and I always enjoyed writing when I was young girl. Um, when I was in 6th grade, I wrote a short story that won an award, and my English teacher stayed after school and helped me with the grammar and the punctuation and things like that. And uh, I really learned a lot from her. But um, I never thought of it as a career growing up. I didn't think of it as a job, but it's something that I've always loved and been passionate about. So,
I always tell people, they ask me a lot of questions. I've had several people come to me about writing and when should you stop dreaming? Are you too old to do anything? And my answer is as long as you're breathing, you should still be living your dreams every day.
I agree with that.
Um, Especially in the climate that we're in now, we're waking up to so much uncertainty right now. And, a lot of people are having anxiety and dealing with depression and things like that. if you can find something you love to do, I by all means say do it. I try to add something new to my list every year, that I turn another age. So I definitely can relate to that. And I would never, it's never you started later in life. It's the fact that you started is the blessing in it, because some people just never do. So tell us about your book that you wrote.
Okay, well, I write children's books. I don't know if you want to see a picture, but this is the book that I was going to talk about today. This is a book about an iguana, and I actually, well, I have to take a step back because before I moved to Florida, my house burned down, and
Oh,
then my ex-husband died, and after that, I was hit by a car, and I was almost killed.
oh my goodness.
So I had to, couldn't walk. I almost lost my leg, so I had to recuperate. And when I was recuperating, I just told myself I have to keep moving. I have to keep moving. I have to try to walk every day. And I would go to a park and do some stretching. And when I was there, I would see this iguana. So the iguana, every time I went to the park, the iguana was always in the same spot at the same time of day, at the same time. So one day I went and something was wrong because he was just standing there, and I noticed that his tree where he would climb up this tree was gone. So
Mm,
I said, I was with a friend and he said, "Oh my God, that iguana looks really grumpy over there." And I said, "Yeah, because he lost his tree." So I wrote a story, but little did I know that after I wrote the story, they were, the city was making some changes to the park. And what they were doing was they were cutting down trees in the park, but these were 100-year-old trees, and lots of animals were losing their homes. And
mm,
this is what happened to Grumpy. He lost his home, and then he didn't know what to do. He just stood there. He's like, "Oh, now what do I do?" Because he had a routine. So that's why I wrote the story. But so it's partially true, but then I made up the rest about how he meets the parrot, because there's green parrots in Miami. They're wild, and they're all over the place. You can hear them screaming in the trees. And so um, I wrote about Grumpy meeting a green parrot that actually helped him and resolved his problem of being homeless. So that's how the story came about.
that's a good story, and it also teaches kids too. I think that you don't know what someone is really going through. You see their exterior, and you really don't know what they're going through. And that was a good um, story. Even though it's your story, it's a good thing, for a lesson for them to learn, because it helps kids to not bully and things like that, when you teach them that you don't know what a child may be going through at home, or anything that they may be going through. And that's for us as adults too. We need to just be more um, compassionate, and show more empathy towards people. So that's definitely a great story. Hold your book up a little bit more so we can see the picture. Okay. Now, did you have someone illustrate that for you personally, or did you get someone from the publishing company?
Uh, well, when I found a new publishing company, and I was looking for someone to do the illustrations, and the publisher said, "Well, I have someone that does illustrations for us here." And when she sent me her her I guess illustration of Grumpy, I I thought to myself, "Oh my God, that's him right there. That's Grumpy." So it was perfect in a way. And this is the first of 5 Grumpy books. I have 5 of them now.
Okay. That's
There's a series, and they all deal with the environment, actually. One's about trash, one's about sea life and how trash affects the sea life, and there's another one about uh, a little mouse that is scared and has a lot of fears. And I wrote that because of COVID and how we're in a time where children are very fearful of different things, you know. And then I wrote a Christmas one too. So Grumpy Goes Home for Christmas. So
Okay.
that's a good one too. That's about family and the love of, you know, his mom and dad and his sister. He has a sister. So yeah, they're all intertwined, and yeah, it turned out pretty good. So,
So if a network, because I'm always the type of person that thinks bigger. So I'm not looking at your book as a kid's book. I'm like, okay, this would be a good cartoon. Maybe on PBS, maybe somewhere. So
yeah,
how
the
should
adventures of Grumpy, right? Exactly.
you in
Yeah,
a series, would you be interested in that?
I would. I would. I was thinking about that myself. I could see that happening where Grumpy and his gang, because there's a book about a squirrel that finds a piece of trash and he tries to use it in his home because the hurricane season's coming and he's trying to block out the wind and the rain. But he takes it to his house and Grumpy tells him not to, and then it sticks to his nose because it's the cup off the lid of a cup, you know, and it gets stuck on his nose where the straw goes. And then he can't, the parrot has to get it off his face. And then they decide that they want to you know, clean up the park, and they start making a statement for humans to see. So that's pretty good too.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Well, you know what? We look forward to seeing that. You know, I talked to someone about doing this. It's actually my brother. And I said, he asked me what, you know, what made me do that. I said, well, I felt like I had the nerve to get everybody together and share their stories right now because we don't have the platform we're used to because of what's going on. And so he told me, he said, and I told him, I said, you have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it can blossom. You never know what it's going to blossom into. So I said, well, this is where I wanted to start. I wanted to start somewhere by hosting this book fair and getting to know the authors. At first, when I thought about doing it, I said, well, I could just have, like, you know, a slideshow, a picture of them with their book, and then, you know, that'd be it. But that doesn't get, you don't get to know the person. And if they're at an actual book fair, they get to introduce themselves to you. They get to have a rapport with you. They get to speak with you, and things like that. So, especially if you are like yourself writing a series. So that's amazing thing, and definitely want to keep your my eyes and ears open for you for
Thank you.
something for that to turn into something, because I think it's a great story.
Yeah, I have another series too, but that one's about my dogs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's cute too. That's children's books also.
Yeah. So how many books have you published in total?
Well, I have seven, but there's let's see, the one I told you about, the little mouse, that's not published yet. That's at the publishers, but
Mhm.
it takes about a year before it's published. And both of my dog books are, I have two dog books that they were the ones that were with the other publisher that I had to republish.
Okay.
So and I'm doing a third book about the dogs that's more for adults. And I went to a book conference in Hawaii, and I met two people that live in New York City. They're a husband and wife team, and they wanted me to publish this book. I mean, they wanted me to write this book about my dogs, and they said they would find a publisher for me because they're very interested in it. So, but then COVID hit, and then that's been on hold for a while because of the um, that's using real photographs. So that's been on hold for a while.
Well, even though COVID hit, it's been a good time to actually work on something you love because we've had a lot of time in the house. So if it's a
Yeah.
sequel to a book or even a new series that you're wanting to write or paint or just tap into something that maybe is something you used to do, that you used to love, to get to know that side of yourself again. So that's an amazing story. I always thought about what it would be like to have a farm and to grow up at a farm because I'm really a country person.
Hmm.
People see the name Consuela and they see my skin color and they assume I'm Spanish or Mexican until I start to speak, and I'm like, no, it's probably not really country because my parents, my mom was from Arkansas and my dad was from Virginia. So me being in Arizona, coming from Ohio, was what attracted me here was the mountains. I love the mountains. And
Yeah.
even though I visited Cali, it was a little bit too fast paced for me.
Hmm.
So Arizona is where I stayed and decided to move. I just relocated last year. So
I love Arizona. It's very spiritual. I think when I was out there, I really felt connected to the earth. Uh,
yeah,
just you just get a really good feeling there. I don't not a big fan of California, but I don't. I mean, I've been from one end of it to the other, but I didn't feel connected to it for some reason. I don't know why. It's beautiful though.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing your story. We will move on to Sheila.
Hey,
Hey,
Hello, how are you doing today?
I am good having a relaxing Sunday. I would say relaxing instead of saying lazy.
Yeah, it sounds better when you say that. When you
Yes, relaxing sounds so much better.
tell us some things about yourself. It could be some things you put in your author bio or some things that you would want to share with everyone.
Okay, so I'm Shelia Sewell. I'm from Mississippi, a small town called Natchez, Mississippi, right on the river. I relocated to Tennessee in 2013 with my son, who will actually be 18 next Sunday.
Oh,
So it's just the two, right? Thank you. It's just the two of us here. We don't really have family here. I have a lot of friends and former coworkers who have become family. Sorority sisters. He wrestles, so like his wrestling teammates, that's like our extended family. Um, I'm also the mother of a 29-year-old. I was a teenage mom. I had my daughter at the age of 15. Was a freshman in high school. Everyone was literally shocked because I was like very quiet, never got in trouble, straight AB student. So when I came back to school after Christmas break with a belly, it was like, did you eat too much or like what's going on with this right here? So people are often shocked that I say I have a 29-year-old daughter, and she lives in Mississippi. She's married. A full circle moment. I went to the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My daughter graduated from there as well. When I was in Hattiesburg, I worked at a Dairy Queen. My daughter is now the regional manager or district manager of that same Dairy Queen. So just like a full circle moment for me.
yes, absolutely.
Yes. As a child, I always read everything. I was a nerd, as people would describe me as a nerd, or they would say the fun or the crunk nerd, because I was a nerd, but I like danced and sang and did all these things. But I really was a nerd at heart. And on my mother's side of the family, I'm the oldest of four girls, and so my mom would read all the time. And my sisters and I started sneaking her books like Brenda Jackson and those old books from back then. So
Hmm.
that's when I first started to read like romance type novels, but I never thought about writing anything really. Like I wrote in school because I had to. Like I never really wrote for fun. And I was a teacher. I'm still an educator. I was a teacher for 22 years until last year. And so I remember at one particular school, they wanted me to do a Black History Month program. And what they were bringing to me, I was just like, this is not cool. Like the kids are not going to want to do this. And so I wrote my own play about like Rosa Parks. And so that's when I started writing. I started writing as a need for school. And then I started writing poems about like relationships and failed relationships and those types of things. And around 2000, maybe like 2000, I was like, okay, I'm going to write my book. I feel like I've read so many books, I can write a book. And so initially I started on something totally different from what I published. And then the book that I published 3 years ago, I started on it maybe early 2000, but I didn't finish it until 2015 for my 40th birthday. And so I sat on it for 2 years trying to decide if I was going to do traditional publishing or, self-publishing, because we all know that there are pros and cons to both of them. And so the more I looked at traditional publishing, it's like if you're not already famous or have like this big news story, you don't get anything. And to me, like this book was like a baby. It's like having carrying a baby for 9-10 months and then you giving it away to someone. And I was just like, I can't give my baby away. Like I'm going to give you my book and you can change everything about it. You can get all my money. So I decided to do self-publishing. And so my first book is this book. It's called Rico's Girls Philosophies, Love, Lies, and Loyalty. And so this is the first book. It's going to be a 6-part series.
Okay.
And so, this book is about 4 friends, Maven, Morgan, Shayna, and Cherie, who've been friends since like middle school. And so it's basically about love, relationship, and what I call just real deal life. It's about women who deal with things that we deal with as women, our careers, our children, our spouses, or, our partners, our family, and of course, relationships and love. And so it's basically about how they are weaving through all of these things. And even though they are best friends, everyone is keeping a secret from each other. And so it asks the question where when there are secrets in your relationships, whether it's romantic relationships or, parent-child relationships on your job, is love and loyalty enough to get over a lie? Because some things that you lie about or people lie to you about, it's small. You can get over it, but then some things cut you so deep that although you forgive a person, you truthfully can never get past a lie. And so we go through this story with these friends to see if these lies that they're all holding from each other are going to be able to be put to bed, or is it going to be, ruining their friendship forever. And so in the first book, it's like basically an introduction of the girls and each girl's situation. And then the next 4 books will be their own individual stories. Because, honey, let me tell you, they all have so much going on that they all need their own book. So after this first book, the next 4 books, yes, yeah, it'll be separately. So the next book, I just finished book 2 about 3 weeks ago. I sent it over to my editor, so she has it now. And so I'm hoping to release it in the next couple of months on my 45th birthday. And this book is going to focus on Maven. She's one of the characters in the story who I describe her as like the around-the-way girl entrepreneur whose mom was a drug addict. So she grew up like raising herself and her siblings. And in the first book, she like reconnects with an old time love, but then he drops this big secret on her. So like the second book is kind of like describing how she's managing and, if she's going to stay with him and how's it going to affect her. So that's Love, Lies, and Loyalty. My first baby. The first baby.
First get your book in the mail and you just hold it and you're like, I got my first book. And
yes. I think I slept with mine the first night. Like I put a couple in the bed with me. It was like, oh, you're here. It was so love.
My first book, the story that I have about kids, it's called My Blended Family. I'm going to release, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it at the end of the year or not, but the first 3 are finished. And it's not just a series about the traditional blended family where a child is going through a divorce and now they have 2 homes. It touches on every aspect of a child that may be in foster care, that may be adopted. There's also another book I'm working on called The Ability of My Disability, which talks about childhood disabilities. So a lot of the kids' books that I write are for kids to say, that's me. They can pick up and say, that's me. I'm
right.
through that, and that I'm going to be okay.
Right.
So when I first got the kids' book, the first kids' book, which was Emily's story, it discusses her parents passing away, but it doesn't discuss it in a way where in an adult form, it discusses it in a child form so they would understand. And I remember the first radio interview I had, he was like, why are you writing about this? Why would you write about this? Do you think kids need to know this stuff? And I said, kids do need to know this stuff because they are going through this stuff right now.
Right.
You know, so when I got my first book, I was excited and I celebrated by myself. So now every time that I release a book that's going to carry on the tradition, I'm going to order
Right.
everything from the same place and you know, have my wine and definitely enjoy that. So that's definitely wonderful that you are writing a series to that. And
Yeah, and I think I mean I think we all as authors we always get asked, you know, the why. Like, why did you write this particular book? Or people always say, well, is it, you know, is it nonfiction? Is it, you know, like my son's dad was like, am I in the book? I was like, no, you're not in the book. But I think for me, it's not like an autobiography, but there are definitely situations that I've gone through that I was able to like put into the book, because you know some things are so hurtful, it's hard to like express that or say that to someone, so I can intertwine it in the characters, and like those who really know me, it's like, okay, I remember that. And of course those who don't are wondering like, are all of these things that I've gone through. And one of the things that I did with the book was I called it Rico's Girls Philosophies, because every chapter has like a saying that either I've said or heard like someone say before. And so to me, it's like little lessons that you can learn. Like one of them, if I just flip through the book, um, one chapter title says, sometimes you have to subtract things or people from your life so that you can in fact add to it. And it's like, that's something that I've experienced myself. Like it's hard, you know, to sometimes take people. It's easier to kind of take things away unless you're truthfully addicted to things. But people, it's hard to take people away from your life, you know, because like they're crutches for us in so many ways, or they've been a friend, or we thought they were a friend or whatever. So it's kind of hard to remove people. But I've also learned that in order for you to get in new things, you have to get rid of the old. It's just like if you're cleaning out your closet and you realize you don't have no space because you have all these clothes, then of course you get rid of clothes before you bring in new things. And it's like the same thing with people. And so like throughout the story, I've just tried to put in little life lessons that, you know, that I've learned over the years, or that I wish that I would have learned when I was, you know, a younger Sheila, in hopes that somebody else who reads the book will look at these chapter titles and say like, you know what, I needed to see that. Like I needed to read that. And like, another thing that was funny about the book is I have a lot of guy friends who like, you know, saw me post about it on Facebook. It's like, you know, I'm gonna buy, you know, just to support you because you my girl, but I'm not gonna read it. And it's like, you know, it's not a male bashing book. Like I love men, like I love guys. It's like, it's just from a woman's perspective, but it's not like I'm all going in on the males. And so a lot of them were very surprised when they actually read the book. And it was like, you know, you did your thing. Like I actually like that. Or, you know, this reminds me of my sister, or like, you know, my wife, like this reminds me of my wife. Or like one of the characters, Shayna, she's the girl who on the outside looking in, people will be envious of. Like she has the name brand clothes and the shoes and the purses and the big house. But inside her home, she's not happy with her, you know, with her marriage. Like she feels like she's just become Xavier's wife and Lyric's mom. Because as women, sometimes that's what we become. We become our spouse's wife and our kid's mom, and we have no identity of ourselves. And so a lot of women who read the book were like, oh my God, like that's me. I'm Shayna. Like I'm 38 years old and all I've been is a wife and a mother. And it's like now my kids are growing up and they have their own identity. And like, what do I have for myself? And so when I wrote the book, just in writing it and going back to read it, like my thoughts were always on, you know, can people relate to this book and can they pick up something? And I really think not just because it's my book, but just thinking about all the characters and all the layers. Like that's one thing that I wanted people to see, is that women, that people in general, but women especially, we're layered. Like we're not just a mother and we're not just, you know, a wife. We're not just our job title. Like there are so many layers of us. And as we grow, we're going to peel off some layers, but we're going to consistently add on. And so it's like, that's one thing that I want women to take away from this book. Kind of like what Susan said earlier, like you're never too old to try anything new, because some of the women in the book are, you know, in their 30s and 40s, and they're just trying new careers. You know, they're just trying new jobs. And also to take away that it's okay to be selfish, you know, to take care of yourself, to put yourself first sometimes. So those are little things that I hope that women who read the book pick up on, and just, you know, maybe make them change and just realize that it's okay to be selfish, put yourself first, take care of yourself, and to start over if you have to.
well, and I think too, society has it that we have to have this perfect life, and we have to have it by a specific age.
Yes.
You know, if someone asks, "Are you okay?" and you may not be okay under the surface, but you answer yes,
Yep.
because either we are too afraid to confide in someone because of what somebody will say. We just
Mm-hmm.
are going to understand our story. So those are excellent points, and definitely look forward to reading both of your books for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate it.
And another thing that I always tell people that ask me that, because I published a book does not make me um, a go-to person, but they feel like because I've already been through it, that I may be able to give some advice. The biggest advice that I'll give is tell your story, which is what I came up with. The name of this is because we all have a story to tell, and
Yeah.
our story is not going to be the same for anybody else. It's going to be different, and you should focus on how you tell it and the audience that you're telling it to. But it's not about who else is writing this or similar things. It doesn't matter. You tell
Right.
your story, and the people that are meant to listen to it will listen.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is they'll follow you. You'll pick up a fan base, and they'll follow you, and they'll be like, "Oh, I can't wait for her second book to come out."
Right.
It's
That's very true. And I get that question a lot too. When people say, well, what do I do? Like, how do I start writing? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's different from different people. I'm a big personality and I'm kind of like all over the place. I think I'm undiagnosed, probably ADHD. Who knows? Maybe so. But I've learned that I write on my phone, or generally for me, I have to just like sit in my mind with it for a while and like stew over it. And then like I literally just start writing. Like when I wrote this particular book, I hand wrote the entire book and then typed it. And even with the second book, I did that for like the first maybe 25 chapters. And so when the pandemic started, as a matter of fact, I might have had 20 chapters. And like honestly, the first month or two in the pandemic, I was like depressed. And it was hard because, as I said, I have a big personality and I'm normally the one that people come to for advice and make them laugh. And so I was in a space where I left the classroom last year because I was just over it. I was tired of teaching, and I became an educational consultant, which was wonderful because I could still work with students and kids. But then when the pandemic hit, I do contract work. So, schools were closed. I couldn't work. So I found myself in a place where for the first time in like 22 years, I had no employment and no income. And so I really didn't know like what to do to like get through that space. And I found myself just not really doing much, like just surviving. And so once I moved in the middle of the pandemic, had to move out of my apartment, and then moved in with a friend who was just grateful enough to let my son and I come. Had to move our move-in date because of the pandemic. So once I finally got to my new space, and I just had to I met someone who just really like changed my life, just held me accountable and supported me. And so that's how I was able to finish the book, because really for like 2 months I couldn't do anything. And so one thing I've told people on Facebook, because I've seen these memes where it's like, if you come out of the pandemic and you haven't learned a new language and learn how to skydive or learn how to ski and learn how to do all these things, then you haven't done much. But I'm like, some people are just really trying to survive. Like some people are really trying to figure out, how am I going to feed myself and my kids for the next day. So it's great if you do come out of it with a new skill or another book. But for some people, it's hard to just survive. And that was me for 2 months. Like I really didn't know what to do. And so it's like, I'm glad that I met people to, hold me accountable and encourage me so I could finish the second book. And what I did this time was I really had to mentally train myself to just type it up. And it was a struggle at first to go from like handwriting everything to then like typing straight from my brain. But I'm glad I did that, because it's like now I can use my phone. If I'm traveling or whatever, I can like type things on my phone. And, because I used to have napkins and receipts and trying to find everything.
yeah.
So it's like now I'm glad that I've trained my, my mind to do it. And like I saw a quote one time that was just very fitting, and I'll end with this. It's like, when you don't have the motivation, that's where discipline comes in. And so that's so very true. Like we know as writers, you're not going to always be motivated to write. And it's true. But I also use it as an excuse. It's like, well, I don't feel like writing. I'm not motivated to write. And it's like, if that's the case, it'll be next year and I still will not have my second book done. So it's like finding myself a schedule and being disciplined. That's what helped me to finish the book number 2, because I definitely was not motivated when I had everything else in the world going on around me. So that's something I would like people to know. Like, you have to be disciplined, because you are not going to always feel motivated to do anything.
That's definitely something that is true. And I think at this time, if you find nothing else besides just being able to get through this time, that's okay too. You
Yes.
find skill, that's great. And that's what we have all had to do during this time, is to kind of be still. And we've had more time to think and appreciate our lives, our family, our friends, and appreciate ourselves also.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And that was
No problem.
I definitely look forward to reading your stories. So we'll definitely move on now to Nicole. Nicole, I love those paintings in the background.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So tell us some things about yourself. It could be some from your author bio or something that you wanted to share.
Well, I was born and raised in Ohio, Akron, Ohio. Not sure what part of Ohio you're from, but that's in Northeast Ohio. And my book, Speak Incest Out Loud, is about growing up in Akron, Ohio, things that occurred in my family and in my family home. So I was born and raised there, but I moved away from there when I was 21 years old. And, as you look back, over your journey in life, that was truly, truly, the Lord moving in my life and transplanting me to the next place where I needed to be. I was married in Massachusetts and divorced as well. I have a young son. Well, he's not young anymore. He's 23. And I know that you're working on a book, I'm not sure if you said you completed it, about a children's disabilities book.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born with cerebral palsy.
Okay.
So not only a divorcee and single mom, but a single mom of a young son with developmental, delay and disabilities. And that was a journey in and of itself, as well as just healing as a person, a woman, a wife, ex-wife, a mom, a sister. And I didn't realize that all of my life I have actually been on my healing journey, because I have been speaking about the abuse that I suffered actually ever since the very first incident. And I didn't even, of course, you don't realize it then it started for me when I was 3. But as an adult, my sisters and I have always lived in, different cities, different parts of the country, and we get together 1 or 2 times a year. But I would always bring up, I'll say my youth and the things that occurred, never realizing finally, maybe 6, 7 years ago, they were like, enough. Every time we get together, you bring this up. I thought, well, heck, don't y'all want to talk about it? But I now know on this side of it, that was my healing journey. That was the way I healed from abuse, incest abuse. And so when in 2015, it was before my 50th birthday, but it was in 2015, it was awakened in me. Again, I don't know how I am just very faithful, and my faith is the Christian faith. And so there are many times I can see where the Lord has just moved in my life to get me onto the purpose and the journey for which He created me. And this is it. Educationally, I'm a nurse, and the nursing career as an RN has served my son and I very well. But in my core and in my life's journey, my purpose is to reach back and support someone else through this healing journey, only by telling my own story, not by offering advice, not by telling someone what to do, but just sharing what I did and what worked for me. And prayerfully, some pearls of wisdom will, supply someone with something to grab hold of to and use for their healing journey. So my book is Speak Incest Out Loud. And it is co-authored with actually a gentleman that I went to junior high and high school with. From Massachusetts, I transplanted out to California, because my young son and wanting him to have some male figures and role models in his life. And I had 3 older brothers out here. They were 17, 18, and 19 years older than I am. And so I thought, I came, all the way out to the West Coast and, for them to interact and be a part of his life. But in 2015, I was flying to Atlanta to meet a girlfriend for like a girlfriend's weekend to hang out in Atlanta. And I stopped in Columbus on the way and contacted this friend from junior high and high school who actually is an author of a couple of poetry books, Jesse Owens. And met with him and said, I am just moved, I am compelled, to share this story with you to help me author it, And originally I asked him to be a ghostwriter of my story. And people who know me, Sheila, I believe it was you talk about meeting people and on the surface, it looks like they have everything going for them in the world. And so hearing my story of when I was walking through those hallways in junior high and high school, what I was fighting with, really, you could have knocked him over with a feather. But he left me with my dignity and just simply agreed to ghostwrite for me. And as the book started to come together, it was great scaffolding and telling of the story, but my story, I needed it to be in there. And so I moved from him as being my ghost writer to he graciously stepped back and allowed me to co-author the book with him. So I could fill in that scaffolding with the personal, with the details and the thoughts and emotions and feelings of being in that space and growing up, in this circumstance. The book itself, there's not a lot of detail about incestuous acts that may have occurred, but just some circumstances around it. And the point of the book is really to help people understand that when you meet people, you never know, like you said, what they're going through. But how to create a space for someone to come and tell you their story. You may be the first person that they've shared this horrific story of their life with, and how we support that. Also, there's an area that focuses on, we have young children moving in and out of our lives all the time. And years ago, people would inquire, ask questions, recognize changes in behavior, and pose questions and dig. And we've gotten so far away from that. We live in our own, household silos, not even family silos, but household silos. And we have to some way bring back a time where we see a change in someone and we inquire and not be afraid to ask those tough questions. And I truly believe that that's the Lord's work. And we are obligated to, in love, to see something in someone and work to reveal that, heal that, help that in some small way even. And so we have people who, sit on our pews in the church or in the classroom as teachers or as nurses. We are obligated to ask those posing questions. Is someone harming you and that type of other thing? But even in our families, we see changes in people. And so I want to be able to help folks understand how to create that dialogue, to ask those questions, but then even follow up, okay? Because we all have a gut instinct. And if your gut is telling you something, just follow up, just check in, just take a peek. Lift up the cover, the rug a little bit to see if there's something that might be going on. If not, keep it moving. I know it's scary, it's frightening, but in empathy, think about the fright of the person on the other side of that, the child. And then for the adults that I have come into contact with who didn't even know my story, but felt a comfort and ease to be able to share their story with me, women and men. And after hearing this story, there's kind of like a and the common thread that I have found, and it is the only common thread, I will say, one of two regarding incest, is that it's scary, it's frightening. It's, at any age, if you haven't worked through to healing from that abuse, it's still, scary and heavy. But to and the only other commonality with incest, abuse, and survival is that word, incest. So my journey is not like anyone else's, and theirs is not like anyone else's. And so I was a part of a radio talk show. I only joined a couple of times because there was a lot of talk about we survivors, we this, and we. And it kind of raised the hairs on the back of my neck because there's no way to lump this type of abuse from someone's life, whether it started at 3, it started at 8, it happened at 8, whatever. There's no way to say what we experience because of everyone's individual journey. And it depends on what you came to the plate with in your psyche, when you experience this. So Speak Incest Out Loud, the book itself is about all of those things, but in the final portion of the book, which I would like to share a piece of it if I have an opportunity at the end, it's about embarking on that healing journey. And I speak to, in the very last section, about the women I call the Super 8. And these are 8 women who, without knowing my story, shared their story with me. And I know that was just messaging to me that I'm on the right path and you have to write this book and you have to get this story out. And so, survival from this predatory type of abuse, where the predator lays the foundation and creates the picture of normalcy and pillar of the community and that type of thing, so they can prey upon a child or a person. I want to help those folks who are living what I call white knuckle, trying to hold on to that and keep it packed down, or I got over it, or it's in the past. I want to help them understand through my experience how to walk through that, sit in that, and go back and rescue that injured child, that hurt child, and carry them up out of the shadow that was cast from that abuse. And so if you look at my cover, I very purposefully, I originally had an artist work to create the vision in my head for the cover, and it just didn't quite work out. But this red ribbon is one of the pieces that she had in her drawing that I held on to. And then with the help of my publisher, and just locating some stock photos, you can see this little girl with her finger over her mouth, saying hush. I thought that was a great contrast to Speak Incest Out Loud. But the gray represents the shadows that are cast in your life from living that experience. And that red ribbon represents the blood of Jesus that helped me heal from that. And so that is the greatest foundation for me to heal from this. And the very next step from that for me is forgiveness. And so I talk about how we do that in the book as well. But I never considered myself an author. And certainly that's why I reached out to this gentleman who I knew had done it before. And I thought he can help me, let me tell you my story, write the book, And out of this, a whole new person, this whole new hope and profession and possibilities have developed. And I too have, in my mind, some creations for some additional writing. And while this exposes it, I want to share about the healing journey, my journey towards healing, again, so that once you get in there, recognize it, and work to rescue that child within. Now what? Let's walk on that path of healing. And so that's where I want to share with others as well.
That's amazing, and it's important because you know sharing your story is going to help so many people that have dealt with that. Me being one, and it may not have been that type of abuse, but it was an abusive situation. And when I went to counseling for dealing with my own healing and my own abuse in childhood, the counselor told me, you are stuck at that age where you have had that abuse, and until you can get help, that inner child is always going to come out and scream for it and want attention and want, and act out in different ways. And we see that so much in adults. So what would you say to someone that is in a relationship or marriage where one of the person that is still dealing with, I'll say, childhood trauma, and the other person is trying to grow and not dealing with that, so it kind of makes them at a crossroad? How would you describe, or how would you tell that person that how to deal with someone dealing with that?
So that brings two thoughts to mind for me, and I'm probably going to go down a rabbit hole. So help me remember your question when I come back and say, now, what was the question? But one scenario is, in a relationship, and the other person has no idea why you behave the way you do because you haven't shared your story.
Mm-hmm.
So in that scenario, I'll speak to the survivor. And what I would say to them is that, celebrate yourself. You survived such a horrific experience, and a lesser person would not have been able to survive. And so I encourage you to move towards healing. And healing is not an end point. It is ever evolving. Who I am today is not that person who celebrated her book in February, who was not, sat across the table at dinner with this gentleman asking him to help share my story. Okay? It's ever evolving. And when I talk about forgiveness, it's not only forgiveness of the perpetrator or people who knew or people who abandoned you by not rescuing you and turning a blind eye, or who should have known, who didn't know. It's forgiveness of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because coming out of that kind of trauma, our bodies are not meant to carry that. We are not built to carry that. So the more we keep that packed out, it's going to come out some kind of way. And for me, it came out in rage.
Mm.
People thought, oh, she's so assertive and she's so smart and she's so this, she's so that. But my family and people close to me knew they got cut to the quick. I had a tongue that would slice you, and they could see it coming. And so I've been told they walked around on eggshells with me so that they wouldn't get that and be cut out of my life. Okay. So in healing that 3-year-old little girl who was initially abused, and when she told the next day was ignored, by healing her, she's no longer controlling my behaviors, my speech, my emotions. Anger is just that anger. You work through it, you have conversations and deal with it. There's no more rage. And, in this process over years, I've had someone say to me, girl, I thought you healed. You said you healed. I thought you healed. Nicole today can look at them with empathy because I know that they have not healed, and say, healing is an ongoing journey. And the further we get in our healing, the less we'll have those rebounds to old behaviors. But for someone who's in a relationship and is knowing that someone has suffered some sort of trauma abuse, again, specifically incest, there are people who have suffered PTSD following this. There are people who see um, uh, they don't see the abuse, but there are many triggers. That's the word I'm looking for. Many triggers, things that remind them of what happened, sights, smells, words, things, moves, something that people did. So they're, they can often be just living white knuckled, as I said before. And so for the mate, the spouse, the friend, whomever, you can't go after the healing, the change for anyone. They have to go after it themselves. And so just like any situation, when you've given all that you can give, when you've supported, you've asked, you're working to understand, what can I do to support you? There's only so much that someone externally can do for me. There's only someone externally can do for that survivor. They have to have it within them to go after their healing. And so patience, understanding, empathy, those are things that we carry in life, hopefully, in any situation. But yeah, the survivor has to go after the healing journey. And I would say to anyone before you start, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
I would say to anyone before you start that healing journey, and to the person who is supporting that healing journey, help them gather their tools for the walk. You have to have tools. And everyone's tools are different, okay? I didn't realize all those years I've been talking to my family about it. That was my tool. I'm a talker, if you can't tell,
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend who always says, that's you, speak out. The time was perfect, speak out, Nikki, I'm a talker. I'm a sharer. I'm always talking about being transparent and authentic. And I think for me, that comes from the abuse being such a lie that you have to keep hidden and packed down, that I work to be very transparent. My son knows my story. I am changing legacy in my family, my immediate family, even if I can't impact the entire family at large. But I think even in creating this work, it impacts the family legacy, even if 3 generations down the line. So, yeah.
People are afraid to tell their story because they don't want the shame that they've felt for years from some of the abuse or things that they have happened. They don't want the shame associated with it, but there is no shame in telling your story. And another thing I think that we're all raised up to believe, which is something Sheila was saying, talking about in her book, I can forgive you, but I'll never forget. I won't forget.
Absolutely.
And in all honesty, you have to wipe it clean as if it has never happened. And you have to want to get to that point, just like with healing. You get to the point where, in forgiveness, you get to the point where I want to forgive, I don't know how, or I want to heal, I don't know how. And so definitely with your story and telling your story, it's a piece of empowerment for them to be able to start their healing journey, because it's you've been one way all your life versus I'm going to be a different person once I start to heal. And you have to do the work. You have to do the work.
It's scary work and it's hard work. And what I've told someone recently is that forgiveness is not about them at all. At all. It is so about me. You want to be selfish, forgive somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with this, my co-author, I remember sharing, I just, when you think about your future and what you want in your dreams, I kept saying I want to be free. I couldn't describe freedom, but I knew I wanted it. And you consider 5 years ago, I thought that heck, I had to stay up healed. And that through that process, I learned that healing is a journey. It's like ongoing. If I, as long as I am here not pushing up daisies, I'll continue to heal. But forgive, if my son and I talk about all the time, if my parents were alive, they wouldn't be a part of his life. I would forgive them, but I wouldn't be in relationship with them. Forgiveness doesn't mean we're forgetting and we're moving on. And there is, a part of that abuse is keeping that peace, keeping the story quiet, and then still having to be around those family members. You don't have to be around those folks. Forgiveness is for you to release that burden, that anger, that pain, so that you can move on to the next level, the next phase. So yeah, forgiveness is, for me, was huge. And just removing that blackness from my thoughts and my mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. These are all very empowering stories you ladies told today. I definitely I'd like to go off the subject a little bit and ask a question to everybody. Name someone that really truly inspired you in your life. Why? And then follow that up by a story with name something really crazy that happened to you that you still remember to this day. So I'll ask all of you ladies, and I'll start with Susan. Name something that a crazy story that either it could be from your childhood, and not necessarily crazy in a way where there's like a mental issue crazy, but crazy, silly crazy, something that happened to you that you still remember to this day.
Okay, well, I was walking in the neighborhood. Well, the neighborhood was pretty big because you couldn't see any houses from my house. So I was walking down the street, and these two young heifers got out of their field, and they broke through the fence, and they were in the street. So as I was walking by them, they looked up, and I thought, okay, they're just going to stay right there. But then one of them started coming across the street towards me. Now, cows are not that smart, but they're so big. They weigh like, they can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, but if they bump against you, they can knock you over. If they're just plain, they can really hurt you if they step on you or something like that. So they're not vicious, but they can really hurt you. So I got a little nervous, and I started walking faster. And when I walked faster, the heifer walked faster. Then I started running, then he started running. And then I thought, oh no. Then I ran up off the road up into the field, and I ran around a tree, and he ran around the tree. Finally, I had to dive over a fence. So he came right up to the fence and went moo like that, because it was so stupid, but he could really hurt me. He was just playing, I guess. But boy, it was scary and funny at the same time. So yeah, that's my story.
And who is one person that inspires you the most? It doesn't have to be a family member, but anyone.
Well, I think my teacher that helped me write my first story was very inspirational to me. She taught me so much, and the way she was dedicated. She didn't have to stay after class. It was on her time, but she stayed after, and she really wanted me to finish the story and hand it in. And I actually won an award for the story. It was published in a magazine. So, but I always remember her doing that for me. And she's the one who really inspired me to, keep writing, actually.
That's amazing. It's wonderful. And Sheila, you're next. What would you say a crazy or silly thing happened to you? It could have been last week or as a kid.
Oh my God, I have so many. But when you say as a kid, I had an older cousin that I would hang out with all the time, and he was the type that was like he was gonna be a rapper and a writer, and he always had us doing this weird stuff. Like we would read, I think it was books called Dungeons and Dragons, and we were like, we're gonna be, even though we're blood cousins, we're gonna be blood like sibling. We like scraped our little fingers and put like our blood together. And so one day it was like him, one of my younger cousins who's about 5 years younger than me. And so where I lived in our neighborhood, it was like a residential neighborhood, but it was kind of like in the, what they would call the country part of Natchez. And so there's just like this big open like space. So we were like going down the neighborhood. And so he said, we're going to take a shortcut. And so like literally we went through like the bushes and through this shortcut. And I promise y'all, it seemed like we entered a whole new world. And so like at first it was like fun and exciting because we were like jumping over stuff, and I never thought that that even existed. But then like it got dark, and so we realized that we were lost. We were gone for hours. My little cousin had just got new shoes. He lost his shoe. We were crying, like I'm talking about crying, hysterically crying. And I don't know how we end up out of the little bushes or whatever you want to call it, but we end up home like 6 hours, 7 hours later. My mom, my auntie, like our moms and our parents were like so scared. They thought somebody had kidnapped us. And whenever I talk to my cousin, we laugh about that to this day. But it was fun for like an hour. But after that hour, it was so scary. And I'm like, why do we follow you in the bushes to a whole new world anyway? But he was older, so we trusted him. So I remember that every time I see my cousin, we talk about that. Like I saw him about a month ago. He's like, do you remember that time we followed Chris into I was like, yes. My mom was so mad. They were glad that, you know, nothing was hurt. You know, we weren't hurt, but it was like and we couldn't describe like where we were. It was like we went down one end of the neighborhood and we came on a total another end of the neighborhood. So yeah, that's one of the things that stands out in my childhood.
Now, who would you say is somebody that inspires you?
Automatically, when you said that, I think about my kids because I feel like they're like the best versions of me, and so it's like I know when I was, you know, because I was a teenage mother, I had my daughter at 15, and so I know that I wasn't the best mom because I was still a child, still, you know, growing myself. But she always tells me like how proud she is, you know, she is of me, and you know how things that I thought I wasn't doing a great job, and like she always pours into me. So like to be able to look at her and like see what all the good things that she's doing now, and like how awesome of a mother she is and a wife that she is, like she truthfully inspires me. And I think with my son, you know, his dad and I divorced when he was like 5, or we separated when he was 2 years old. And so we had joint custody, we still do, but because we live out of state, it's been the two of us living together for so long. So I think just the fact that he was able to navigate through, you know, being a child of a divorced couple, it, you know, it just inspires me that, you know, his dad and I did the right thing by, we just made a promise that when we separated, we were going to make sure we kept him at the forefront because we both grew up without our dads. And so it was like, just because our marriage didn't work out doesn't mean that, you know, we still can't be like the best co-parents. And so I think like looking at them and seeing how successful they are in their own right, it just inspires me to like, you know, continue to grow and be the best mom and that I can be.
That's wonderful. Definitely amazing. And Nicole, what about you?
You know, I was thinking about, you know, stories that stand out. And certainly, you know, there was some fun and crazy things in college. And then my great friend and I, there are some fun and crazy things that, you know, that we have experienced. But a standout story, I don't have one. I don't have one that I can think of to share. And anything I could share probably would be appropriate for this setting. So I will move on to my inspirations.
You sound like me. I always tell people I'm happy social media was not around when I was in my 20s.
Yes, I say that all the time. Freak Nick 1994. Glad you wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm happy my 20s missed that whole entire time because, oh my gosh.
Yeah. That little girl was still acting out, so I've got some stories to tell. But anyway, I can't separate, my into one inspiration. There are two. First would be my great friend of about 45 years. We've been friends. 46 years, 45 years, I think it is. We've been great friends, and she's an inspiration for me because, when I was in high school and college, and then certainly when I moved away to Massachusetts and was becoming a young, wife, it was the lessons that she had learned from, her wise grandmother about womanhood, about, how to be a wife, how to exist, in the world. That she and I used to talk about on the phone all the time, that I was able to bring into my marriage, into my womanhood, into my adulthood, where I was missing lessons from, my mom or an older, wise woman in my family. And so she is an inspiration in who she is still as a wife today of, more than 30 years of marriage. And so she has been the counselor while I laid on the proverbial couch, if you will, and shared my stories. We've cried, and we have psychoanalyzed, corrected, scolded, and loved on one another for 45 years. So she's definitely an inspiration to me. Bigger than that is my son, who was born prematurely, and everything they said he wouldn't do, he has knocked it out of the park. From surviving ICU to making it home, alive on the drive home, to, never being able to walk and won't be able to go to school. He is 23, he is in college, and he is just a phenomenal young man. And, I can't take any credit in that. Again, just being the vessel to do what I've been told to do from the Lord, and watching his life and who he is, and he's just unencumbered and unafraid and just living life, and that is a huge inspiration for me. He is my hero. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I'll say that my grandmother, this would be my mom's mother, she wasn't the most inspiring woman, only because she was only 4'11", and she had to grow up. She grew up rough. She had to grow up rough. She was mixed with different things, and back then she was made fun of a lot. So she had to learn survival at an early age, especially losing her own mother at a young age. But I will say one of the things that she told me that I still hold dear to this day is she said, "Don't fear anybody but God." She said, "God is the only person that can give you life." And it didn't resonate with me at the time she said it. I think I was maybe 12 or 13, and I'm like, who's God? And not that, my mom, didn't, they didn't read the Bible or, tell us who God and Jesus and things was. But at that age, you don't really have a whole sense of, who he is and your faith until you get older, because your faith starts to get tested. But, I think about that in so many things now, because people have the fear, and our fears are what keeps us from doing some of the things that we should have been doing or meant to do, or our journey on our path. But that will keep us in a box for our whole life if we allow it. So that was one of the things that I took away from her. She's been gone for years, but I still think about her to this day, and she would talk to me and tell me stuff. And I pulled out a old picture of me in middle school, and I looked at her, and I posted it on Facebook by her, and everybody's like, "You look just like her." And it didn't dawn on me until I was older that she was telling me this stuff because she's seen herself, me, and she wanted me to know that, dream bigger, believe in yourself, love yourself, and all the things that, you know, I've been on a spiritual journey, healing journey, but this last year has been more of a peaceful journey, which is one of the reasons I decided to leave Ohio, and I'm from Columbus. Um, it was for peace, and I found peace here. And it's something that I didn't have my whole entire life, and I'm 42. And I'm just happy that I was able to find peace and go on that journey, because that was for me the biggest thing that I wanted for this last past year. So, with that being said, I want to say thank you all for joining me this afternoon. You guys had some amazing stories. I will post this on my YouTube channel under Consuela Man, and feel free to share it. But just thank you guys so much for trusting me to come on and be part of this platform. You guys are beautiful with amazing stories, and I'm glad that I could make a platform for you guys to tell them. So I will be buying all your books.
Yay.
And I will probably do one last Zoom meeting call just for all the authors to come on.
That'd be good.
And hopefully everybody can. I know I can't ask for everybody's schedule, because we'll probably never get it scheduled if we if we do it like that. But I will set it out, you know, far enough to where if I could steal an hour of your time for you know, you guys to say how you felt about the book fair, or, you know, me as a host, don't be too harsh on me now. But, you know, just to come on and see the other authors. I encourage, you know, you guys to support self-published authors and to support one of the authors on the platform. Not just support them by buying their book, but going out to leave a review too, because that means a lot to us as authors. So thanks again, you ladies. Thanks for your stories, and you guys have a wonderful rest of the Sunday, and God bless.
Thank you.
It was
Bye,
wonderful.
y'all.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.